Good morning, everyone. My name is Max from Smart. So today I will be doing the E-Invoice online training for this session. Let's start. Okay, so for our E-Invoice training module, mainly we will cover three parts. We'll cover for maintenance and validation, where we will do the E-Invoice store setup, the customer and also supplier, team validation update, and also the classification code validation. Then we will have the E-Invoice transaction flow, where we will show you for our retailer, B2B and B2C, our e-commerce, for self-bill, disbursement, and also employee claims and benefit. And after that, we will also show you our system where we do the submission flow and also the dashboard. Then we will have our e-invoice dashboard. Then we will show you the month-end consolidated e-invoice submission flow and also the grace period consolidated e-invoice submission flow. So how e-invoice works. So this is an overview of the workflow of the invoice. So we will issue invoice like normal. Okay, we'll issue an invoice. Then after that, once we issue out, we will validate the invoice. Okay. Once validated, then we'll have the notification. Once everything is done, then we will share out the e-invoice. Okay. So if let's say we have rejection or cancellation, then we will need to check what's the issue. Then after that, once everything is done, your supplier and buyer, they can check from their MyInvoice portal. So they will have a summary of the transaction in the MyInvoice portal. Okay, so how Smart E-Invoice works. We have to assign the intermediary taxpayer portal. Then we will have the B2C cash sales. Then we will have self-bill solution. Okay. Then we have third-party consolidated submission. We also have marketplace sales, our B2B, our e-store, and also the 6-month consolidated submission. Okay. So this is the overall flow, including for our post. Okay. We have accounting, marketplace, and inventory, third-party merchant, then our post, then everything will go to our Dynamod, and then from Dynamod, we will send to RCN for the validation. Okay. So during the first batch, we also have few customers that we already implemented. Okay, like AA Pharmacy, China Airlines, Mega Kulim, and also Zone Jimat. To use our Dynamod e-invoice, mostly the first thing that you need to check whether the version that you are currently using, is it the latest one? If not the latest, at least the version have to be in 2024.3. Okay, our current latest version is 2024.4. So if your software is not updated, please do the update, or if you're not sure how, you can ask your agent to help you to do. Okay. Also, another thing is, for you to use the e-invoice, you have to get a valid e-invoice module subscription, because if you do not have that, then you are not able to use our e-invoice subscription. So if you don't have, then you have to get it from your agent. You can talk to them. So now we will show you how to do the maintenance and also validation on our system. So e-invoice maintenance and validation. So mainly we will need to set up the e-invoice store, company profile, location profile, then your customer or supplier, the number update and validation, then also classification code update, and also some utility tools that you can use. Okay. Right. So first thing is we need to enable the e-invoice setting. Okay. So we have to go to common module, setup, then company default settings. So from company settings, you'll see number 5, E-Invoice. So from here, you have to tick enable E-Invoice Malaysia. Okay. So the effective date, you put it as of that day lah, that you enable this. Okay. Then you save it. So once you save, when you go back to the system menu, then you'll see that you have a new module called E-Invoice Malaysia. Okay. So now we have to set up the store. So we go to E-Invoice Malaysia, setup, and then E-Invoice Store. So from here, we add on a new record. We add a store ID. Usually we'll put it as HQ, then your description. Okay. After that, go to more. Then we click on set production URL. Then we set intermediary configuration. Okay, so at the bottom here, you can see we have the client ID and the client secret. Okay. Make sure the client login option, you set it as intermediary option. Okay. So what is intermediary and how to set Smart as intermediary in MyInvoice portal? So LHCN, they provide two options for businesses to issue invoice. Okay. One is through the MyInvoice portal manually. The second one is the API integration, which Smart is using lah. So if you're using API integration, then you need to obtain the software company's information like the TIN, BRN, and also name to set it as intermediary in the LHCN invoice portal. So below, you can see the steps to add in the intermediary. So you have to access your MyInvoice portal. Okay. So you click on your taxpayer profile. Go to the bottom. There you can see representative where you can add in the intermediaries. Okay. Click on add intermediary. Then you key in the TIN number, the BRN, and also the name. Then you can click on search. Then you can continue. So in case if you type in the name Smart-ACC Solution, Sendirian Berhad, but if you're unable to find, you can try to use the alternative way lah, which is the SXXX underscore XXX to search. So usually you will be able to find. So once click on continue, then you have to set the representation from and to. So representation to the date, you put it as long as possible lah. So maybe 2050 or maybe you can put to 2099. Okay. So at the bottom here, the permission, make sure to enable all. If you're not sure, you can just follow this picture lah. All of this is already ticked to enable. Okay. So once everything enabled, then we click on add intermediary. So this is the example. So you can see the status is active. All right. After that is done, then now we need to set up our E-Invoice project. So we go to E-Invoice Malaysia, setup, and then E-Invoice project. So what is E-Invoice project? This is actually for you to set the system to help you automate the process flow. So in case if this is not done, then the system will not help you to automatically submit. Okay, so you can see these are all the things that the automation flow will do for you lah. Okay, so you add new record, you key in your project ID, your description, and also effective date. Okay, then choose the store ID, the one where we set up just now, and then click populate task. Once everything is done, then we can save. So company and location, these are the things that you will need to fill in. So basically, it's actually the same thing for company and location. So you have to have their registration name, their TIN number, and then their business registration number, the new one, not the old one. Okay. And if they have SSC number, or if they have tourism tax, they have to key in. Then their contact number, their email address, MSIC code, business activity description, and also their company address. So what is MSIC code? So basically, it's a 5-digit numeric code that represent the taxpayer business nature and also activity lah. So where you can find the MSIC code. So we'll have two links for you, first and second one. You can also get it from your taxpayer income tax return form, or you can also get it from your company SSM document. Okay. The other one is from our system. You can also check the MSIC code lah. Okay, you can get it from E-Invoice Malaysia and the setup, E-Invoice code tables, and the E-Invoice MSIC. Okay. So now we need to set up the company's information for E-Invoice. So you notice that the E-Invoice tab here is, you can see it now because you have already enabled the E-Invoice function. If you cannot see, that means you haven't activated the E-Invoice yet. So you need to double check first. Then from here, once you have this E-Invoice tab, so you will need to key in your information. Okay. Then take note that the MSIC ID and also the state ID, you are required to choose and fill in. Okay. So the company registration number, like I mentioned just now, you have to use the new one. Okay. Not the old one. You have to use the new one. So once everything here is already being filled in, okay, you can click on this small icon here to validate the TIN number. So if successful, then done. So if not successful, got some issue, then you need to check back lah. So maybe you miss out some number you need to check. Okay. And then this one is the compulsory field that you need to fill in. Okay. The postal zone, city name, state ID, and also country ID. Okay. Country ID is MYS, is a default by LHDN. So for those field that you are unsure, okay, you can either put it as NA, 00, or 50. Okay. Next, we'll need to set up the location. So for location, normally the information will be the same as the company. Okay, so in case it's the same, so you can see at the right here, there is two options here. Okay, the first one is to copy the company location to the company information to this location only. The second one is if all of the location also sharing the same information as the company, then you can use the second one where it will copy the company's information to all of the location. Okay. So you don't need to key in manually one by one. Lah. Okay. Now we go to supplier and customer. So these are the information that you will need to prepare. You need to key in. So you have supplier name, their T number, their BRN or identification number. Okay. Then SSC number if they have, tourism tax, the email, MSIC code, business activity description, address, and also contact number. So the difference between supplier and buyer is only the tourism tax number. Okay. So for supplier, we will need to key in their information. Okay, it's under supplier module, setup, and then supplier. So same thing under E-Invoice tab, you need to key in their information. Okay, compulsory field that need to fill in registration name, their TIN number, their register type, register number, whether they are Malaysian or not, then SSC registration number. If no, then you can put NA. Tourism tax, if no, then you can also put NA. Their email, MSIC ID, postal zone, city name, state ID, and also country ID. So for foreign supplier or self-bill supplier, you can tick the checkbox here for self-bill invoice supplier lah, if it is self-bill. If it's not, then you need to tick. Okay. Is it all cannot hear or some of you can't hear? So maybe for those that not clear, maybe you can check your internet connection. Yeah, or else you can just try to log out and then log in again. Okay, and continue. Okay, so if let's continue. So for supplier, if let's say it's a local supplier state ID, we have to choose to fill in. So when we fill in the country ID, it will automatically populate for you. Okay, so let's say this is a foreign supplier, so we can use 17, not applicable, and then the country ID it will show as NA. Okay. All right. Now for customer, so the same thing. We'll go to customer module, setup, and then customer. Then under E-Invoice tab, fill in all the information. Same thing as supplier. You need the name, the PIN number, the register type, register number, and then if this is Malaysian or not. If yes, then you tick Malaysian. If not, then you don't need to tick. SST, if they have. No, then you put it NA. Then their email, MSIC ID, postal zone, city name, state ID. Okay. So our system we already have the general TIN number. Okay. So as you can see at the side here, we have GT10, 20, 30, and 40. Okay. So what's the difference? So for GT10, it is a general public TIN, usually for Malaysian. Okay. Then we have GT20, which is for non-Malaysian. Okay, foreign buyer team. Then we have GT30, which is foreign supplier team. And then we have GT40, which is for government only. Okay, so these are the difference. All right. Now we have some utility tools that you can use. Okay, we have team validation and also bulk update tools for customer and supplier. So the team number validation, you can access through E-Invoice Malaysia transaction and then taxpayer team validation. Okay. So when you're in already, you click on the refresh data. Okay. So once it's done, then you have a list at the bottom. Okay. So you can select the record that you want to validate. You click on it, and then you can right click, and then you have this option for you to choose. Where you can submit for taxpayer team validation, set to not validated, enable taxpayer team validation, or disable. Okay, this process is the same for location, supplier, and customer. So in case if you don't want to select one by one, you can actually highlight one, and then on your keyboard, you press Ctrl plus A, it will select all, right click, and then you can select the action that you want. Okay. So this is for customer and supplier, same thing. All right. Now we have the bulk update tools. So you can access through E-Invoice Malaysia, setup, then utility. So you have import customer or import supplier. So for example, import customer. So you click on the drop down here. So let's say if you're in import customer, when you click on the arrow here, it will only show you customer. So if you're under supplier, when you click on the drop down arrow, it will only show you supplier. It won't show both. Okay. So you click drop down, you select the format ID, and then you click on export data. Then you press yes, and then you click on export data. Then you click save to save the Excel file. Okay. So this is the example of the template. Okay. So this Excel file, you can use it to update your customer e-invoice information. So once everything is updated, then you can go back to the module there. Okay. Same, click on the drop down arrow, select the format. Then you click browse file. Then you select the template that you have already done. Where is it located? Click OK, and then you click process to do the import. Okay. It's the same process for both supplier and also customer. Okay. So now we have classification code update. So classification code update, we have two places that need to do. One is in your stock code. Another one is in your child account if you're using account code to create your invoice. Okay. So what is classification code? So this code is actually to define the category of product or services being billed for commercial transaction. So it is a three-digit code, and currently we have 45 categories by HDN. So you can find it from this link from MyInvoice or from our system, you can go to E-Invoice Malaysia, setup, E-Invoice code table, E-Invoice classification code. So how you update this classification code into your item, your stock item? So to access your stock item, you go to inventory module, setup, then stock. You call out your item, which item that needs to add in the ID. Then you can see from E-Invoice tab, there you have item classification ID and also item tax type ID. Okay. So by default, in our system, we already help you to change all into using 022 for others, and tax type ID is not applicable. So if you know the item, what is the code, and also the tax type ID, then you can change it. For your account code, you have to access through the accounting module, setup, and then child account. So you actually don't need to maintain all, just identify which one that you will be using, and then you add in the classification code and also tax type ID for the account code. Okay. So now we'll show you the transaction flow. So for the transaction flow, we have for a retailer, business to business, and also business to consumer. Then we have for e-commerce, marketplace. Then also for self-bill for overseas purchase. Then disbursement and also the reimbursement for employee and expenses claim. So this is the transaction flow for our system. All right. So we have different types of e-invoice. Okay, we have the normal e-invoice. Then we have the self-bill e-invoice, and also the consolidated e-invoice. So this is the workflow for the e-invoice, where we will create and submit the e-invoice, and then the validation. Then we'll have the notification of validated, then sharing of the e-invoice. And then if let's say there's a rejection or cancellation of e-invoice, and then finally the summary of e-invoice where we can obtain from the MyInvoice portal. Okay. E-invoice transaction flow for retailer. So we have B2B, where we have customer invoice, debit note, credit note, and refund note. As for B2C, we'll have our front end, the post, cash sales. Okay, so this is the flow for B2B. So we'll issue the invoice for our customer. Okay, it's either invoice, credit note, debit note, or refund note. Then our system will submit it to HDN for the submission. Then after that, HDN will return the validation result for us. So what is the difference between invoice, credit note, refund note, and debit note? So for credit note, usually is for reduction of amount for previous issued invoice, including sales discount, sales return. Okay, to be used when reduction of invoice does not involve returning of monies to buyer. Okay, so for debit note is to increase the amount on a previous issued invoice, Whereas for refund note is a document issued by seller to confirm the refund on buyer's payment. So this is typically used when it involves the return of money. So this is the difference for credit note and refund note. So for credit note, sold 200 office share and issue the E-Invoice. Okay. So 8 units of shares 40, return back. So Mr. Lim will only need to issue a credit note. This is a credit note lah. So for refund note, same thing. So 200 office share, done, paid 2,000. 8 units of shares 40 and return back to Mr. Lim. So they will need to refund 80 ringgit. Okay. So for our invoice, you can access through customer module, transaction, and then customer invoice. So in our system, we have two document flow for our e-invoice. Okay. One is open and another one is ready to submit. So what is the difference? Ready to submit is if you set it as ready to submit, our system will automatically help you to submit this document to HDM. Okay. For open, if you set it as open, meaning to say, maybe this document you still need your higher up or another person to double check before it is ready for submission. So this is the difference. So you can see the buyer information. When you issue the invoice, it will automatically help you populate based from the customer profile that we initially set up for the customer. So once all information is verified, correct, then we can save and we can submit the invoice already. Okay, either we can do it manually or we can do it automatically through the system. So let's say if you want to submit manually. So once you save this document, you can go to more and then E-Invoice section, click on submit document, and then you submit the document. This is how you do it manually. So once you click submit document, it will show you submit document process completed. The status already changed to valid. So if let's say it is submitted successfully, so LHDN will return the status document as valid. Okay. The compulsory 55 field will also be stored. And then we can generate the document with the UUID using our E-Invoice format. Okay. So these are our E-Invoice sample format. All the required 55 fields info will be shown in the format. The UUID will also be shown. Okay, the unique identifier number. And at the bottom, you will have the QR code for a customer to scan.
For issuing customer
Okay, so I'll show you a video on how to, a simple video on how to do the invoice.
For issuing customer invoice, you can just key in your transaction as usual. When finished, save the transaction. Then, go to more E-Invoice action, click Submit Document and proceed for E-Invoice submission. The system now is getting result from IRBM and is done. The transaction status will become validated success. You can print out the E-Invoice format and give it to your customer.
All right. So now we have the cancellation and rejection flow. So we have 72 hours of rule for rejection and cancellation. Okay. So for supplier, they can self-perform cancellation of e-invoice within 72 hours with valid reason. Okay. So upon cancellation, notification will be sent to the buyer. Okay. For buyer side, they can request rejection within 72 hours, same with valid reason. Okay, for let's continue. So for buyer, they can request rejection within 72 hours. Same thing with valid reason. Okay, if supplier accept rejection from buyer, okay, I repeat again. So for the 72 hours rule rejection or cancellation, for supplier, they can self-perform cancellation of the invoice within 72 hours with valid reason. Okay, upon cancellation, notification will be sent to the buyer. Okay, whereas for buyer, same thing, they can request rejection within 72 hours with valid reason. If supplier accept the rejection from buyer, they can cancel the invoice within 72 hours. If supplier did not cancel the invoice, no cancellation is allowed after 72 hours. Okay, so e-invoice, it will be automatically accepted after 72 hours. Okay, so once accepted, okay, any subsequent adjustment would have to be made by issuing either credit note, debit note, or a refund note. Okay. So for cancellation transaction within 72 hours. So if you have amendments or cancellation, can be requested within 72 hours, okay, in accordance to invoice rules lah. So from the invoice, okay, we go to more invoice section and then we cancel document. Okay, make sure to fill in the cancel reason, press OK, and then cancel the document. Once editing is complete, then may proceed with the submission as usual. Okay. So if let's say you already exceed 72 hours, so once you exceeded, then you cannot do anything to this invoice already. Okay. So as such, you will need to use credit note lah. Okay. So for sales credit note, you can go to customer module, transaction, and then customer credit note. Okay. So same thing, either we set it as open or ready to submit. And then remember that the knock-off invoice must be applied to the original invoice. Okay. So the submission process flow is the same as the customer invoice. So the original e-invoice validated UUID will be displayed when knock-off invoice are applied to the original e-invoice. So you can see the validation link and also the original invoice validated UUID. Okay.
For issue
Show you a video for credit note.
For issuing credit note, you can just key in your transaction and match with the invoice as usual. When finished, save the transaction. Then, go to More E-Invoice Action, click Submit Document and proceed for E-Invoice submission. The system now is getting result from IRBM and is done. The transaction status will become validated success. You can print out the e-invoice format and give it to your customer.
Okay. So for sales refund note, uh, hold on. You give me 5 minutes. I try to change to another line. You hold on. Okay, so sorry. All right. Maybe I repeat again the video. Hold on.
For issuing credit note, you can just key in your transaction and match with the invoice as usual. When finished, save the transaction. Then, go to More E-Invoice Action, click Submit Document and proceed for e-invoice submission. The system now is getting result from IRBM and is done. The transaction status will become validated success. You can print out the e-invoice format and give it to your customer.
Okay. All right. So for sales refund note, okay, you can access through the customer module, transaction, then customer refund note. Okay, so the invoice number must be selected and the reason must be filled in. Okay, so you have to key in your reason. Okay, then you enter the price or quantity for the stock ID or account code to process the refund. Okay, then you select the payment method such as cash or bank in the payment details section. Okay, then after that, the document is ready to submit. Okay, the processor is the same as the customer credit note. Okay, so now is for B2C. Okay, business to consumer transaction type. So for first scenario, supplier obtain the buyer's detail. Okay, supplier will issue and validate the e-invoice with IRBM. Okay, after that, supplier will share the validated e-invoice to buyer. Okay, buyer may scan the QR code to view the e-invoice validity. Okay, then buyer will be able to substantiate the transaction for tax purposes. All right. So for second scenario, supplier issue normal receipt to buyer. Okay, same like what we are doing now, current business practice. Then supplier will consolidate all receipt on a monthly basis. And then supplier will issue and validate consolidated invoice with IBM. Okay, so there are two scenarios. One is either directly they issue out to the buyers, or second one, they will do it by consolidate on monthly basis. Okay. So for Malaysian individuals, they will need to provide either TIN number, my card number, or they can provide both. Okay. Whereas for non-Malaysian individuals, they can either provide their TIN number, or they provide the TIN number and also passport number. Okay. So take note, if we use general TIN number, we must also key in their passport number. Okay. So this is the flow for first method. Okay. Customer will request e-invoice from post. Staff will click reprint and fill in customer details. Okay. So they will print out the e-invoice and then they will pass it to the customer. Okay. Then the e-invoice will sync back to our Dynamod, and then Dynamod will submit the e-invoice to LHDN. Okay. So for post, okay. So when they complete the post sales transaction, okay. Once everything done, they continue to the next step, okay. So they go to receipt, and then at the bottom you can see e-invoice button. So once you click on it, you need to key in the information, okay. To key in the RT number or IC number, or if they don't provide you any TIN number, you can use the general TIN, and then you click on submit invoice, okay. So those fields with asterisk, you have to fill in before you save. Okay. So once the document submitted, okay, so the e-receipt information, we can send it either by email or also by WhatsApp. But in order to send by WhatsApp, this is actually a third-party paid subscription. So if you need it, you can talk to your agent. They will assist you for this. Okay. So you can see if by WhatsApp, it will show you the receipt and also uh, basic greetings. Okay. Okay. This is for method two. So customer buy from you. Okay. You print a receipt with a QR code. Then they can scan the QR code and they fill in their details. Okay. Once everything is keyed, it will sync the information to our Dynamod. Dynamod will submit the e-invoice. Once get the validation details, then the e-invoice is created. Then customer will receive e-invoice via email or WhatsApp. So this is for our SAP, our e-invoice platform. So customer scan the code to our SAP, fill in the information, sync to Dynamod. Dynamod will sync to HDN, and HDN will get back the validation to our Dynamod. This is the flow. So this is a sample of the cashiers, the receipt. QR code is at the bottom. So when you scan the QR code, it will redirect you to our SCP. Then from here, you will have to key in your information. Okay. So now is the transaction flow for e-commerce. So we have for marketplace and also e-store. So for e-commerce, so actually for e-commerce like TikTok, Shopee, Lazada, we actually don't need to issue e-invoice for our customer lah, because the e-invoice will be issued by the respective marketplace. Okay. So how do we set it in our system? So like let's say we take Lazada for example. Okay. This marketplace customer, at the e-invoice tab at the bottom here, you can see there is a checkbox for not applicable for e-invoice. Okay. So those that not require e-invoice generation, you can tick this one, not applicable for e-invoice. Okay, then you can save it. So for marketplace transaction, customer module transaction, then customer invoice. So when you key in everything, you can actually see from for the invoice statement, it already help you to tick as not applicable. So it won't generate the invoice for you. Right. So for web store. So for this one, we will use month-end consolidated e-invoice to submit for the e-invoice. Okay. So same thing, you will need to key in the invoice information. Okay. The TIN number, we can use general public TIN number, either GT10 or GT20. GT10 for local buyers, GT20 for foreign buyers. Okay, so same thing, information that you need to fill in, the registration name, the TIN number, register type, register number, is Malaysian. If it's not Malaysian, don't need to take. The SSC, tourism tax, not applicable, just put NA. Their email, MSIC ID, postal zone, city name, and state ID. Okay, the transaction falls under customer module, transaction, then customer invoice. So for e-store invoice transaction require e-invoice generation and submission. So the submission process you can do one or two ways lah. Okay, you can either do manual submission, follow the usual process flow. Okay, just like how you submit for customer invoice, or you can do month-end consolidation. So we'll consolidate the invoice at the end of the month for submission. So now we'll have transaction flow for self-bill. Okay, we'll have self-bill invoice for overseas purchase of goods and service. Another one is for other allowed transaction. So what is the difference between invoice and also self-bill? Okay, normal invoice is supplier, they will issue invoice to buyer. Okay, when the sold goods and service rendered. But for self-bill invoice, why we call it self-bill? Self-bill is for one those that still haven't falls under the invoice batch, like batch 3, okay, or those um those roadside sellers, like those aunties that don't have this information, so they won't issue the invoice to you. So you have to do a self-bill invoice, okay, to record the purchase and also the spending transaction. So these are the list of allowed transaction to issue the self-bill invoice. Okay. Transaction like payment to agents, goods or service rendered by foreign suppliers, importation of goods, imported service, profit distribution, like dividend distribution, e-commerce transaction, payout to betting and gaming winners, transaction with individual who are not conducting businesses, then interest payment, except for businesses that charge interest. Okay. And the last is the claim compensation or benefit payments from the insurance business of an insurer. Okay. Self-bill invoice transaction flow. So once we issue out the self-bill invoice, system will help submit to LHCN for the e-invoice submission. Okay. So once validated, it will store the transaction. Okay. So for self-bill transaction, we will have for supply invoice, supply debit note, supply credit note, and also supply refund note. Okay. So for importation of goods and also importation of service, okay, let's say for example, the importation is on month of October. The last day for you to issue the self-bill invoice is on end of next month. Okay, so either goods or services is also the same thing. Okay, so for self-bill supplier profile info, okay, same thing. We go under supplier module, setup, and then supplier. Okay, like I mentioned just now, if it's a self-bill or foreign supplier, we are required to take the self-bill E-invoice supplier. Okay, then the information that we need to fill in, their registration name, their supplier team. Okay, for foreign seller team, we can put as GT30. Okay, then their register type, register number. If not Malaysian, we don't need to take. Then SST and also tourism tax, we can put it as NA if not applicable. Then the email. Then MSIC ID we'll put as 50 for foreign supplier. Okay. Business activity also we put it as NA for foreign supplier. Then the postal zone, city name. State ID will key in as 17 for foreign supplier. Then country ID, if foreign supplier, it will show as NA lah. So self-bill invoice, same thing. We go to supplier module, transaction, supply invoice. So once everything key in, you can assign the document flow as either open or ready to submit. Okay. Then you can see that it automatically help you to put it as self-bill invoice. Then you can see the supply team. We're using GT30, general, but the general ID. Then double check your MSIC ID, your supplier MSIC ID with 50. Then the state ID is 17, and the country ID is NA. So once all this information is correct, then you can save. Then you can submit for the invoice. Same process flow, similar to customer invoice. Okay. Same thing for supplier credit note. Refund note. So for refund note, need to take note is the invoice number must be selected. Reason also you have to fill in. Okay. Then you have to key in the price or quantity for the stock ID or account code. Then select the payment method in the payment details section. So submission flow, same thing as customer refund note.
For
So we will show you a video on how to do the self-bill.
For issuing self-billed invoice, you can just key in your transaction as usual and make sure the e-invoice treatment is marked as self-billed invoice. When finished, save the transaction. Then, go to More E-Invoice Action, click Submit Document and proceed for e-invoice submission. The system now is getting result from IRBM and is done. The transaction status will become validated success. You can print out the e-invoice format.
Okay. So for transaction involving payments to agent, dealers, or distributor, so we have two methods of doing this. So one is a self-bill invoice. Okay. We process this through the supply invoice flow, like the one I showed you just now. Or the second one will be using payment voucher. So we use this method for direct payment transaction. Okay. So how to go to the payment voucher? You can go to supply module, transaction, and then payment voucher. So the type you will need to select as other payment. Okay. Enter the payee details, the information, and any relevant remark. Then set the payment method under detail, payment method ID. You can select what payment method that you'll be using. Okay. Cash or bank. Then you specify the account code that you'll be using. Okay, in the other payment field. Okay, so because for payment voucher, we use as other payment. So the information you will need to key in manually lah. Okay. So fields that you need to fill in, same thing, registration name, supplier team. Okay. So if it's a local seller, then you can use GT type. If a foreign seller, you can use GT30. Okay. Their register type, register number is Malaysian, if they're Malaysian. Okay. SST and tourism tax. If not applicable, you just put any. Email. And then MSIC ID, you put as 50 if for foreign supplier. Business activity, you put as NA if for foreign supplier. Then their postal zone, city name, and state ID. So state ID, same thing. For foreign supplier, put as 17. So country ID will show as NA lah. So you can see the status. So the submission process flow is the same thing as supply invoice. So once submitted successfully, MHDM will return the status document as valid. Okay. So same thing, the 55 field will be stored, and then you can generate the e-invoice format with the UID. So this is a sample. Okay. Same thing, we have the UID and also the QR code.
For issuing payment
So show you a video on how to do the payment voucher.
For issuing payment voucher, you can just key in your transaction as usual. And make sure the e-invoice treatment is marked as self-billed invoice. When finished, save the transaction. Then, go to More E-Invoice Action, click Submit Document and proceed for e-invoice submission. The system is getting result from IRBM and is done. The transaction status will become validated success. Eventually, you can print out the e-invoice format and give it to your customer.
So now talk about disbursement and reimbursement, and also the employee benefit and claim. So disbursement and reimbursement. Okay, for disbursement, we are not required to issue invoice to recover the money. Okay, whereas for reimbursement, we are required to issue invoice to recover the money. So this is disbursement. Okay. Is it better now or still not clear? So supplier A issue invoice in the name of customer for the goods sold or service rendered. Okay. So my company make payment on behalf of customer and then recover the payment from customer. So it's not required to issue invoice. Okay. For reimbursement, so supplier A issue invoice in the name of my company. Okay, my company make the payment to supplier A, and then my company recover the payment from customer. E-invoice is required to do the submission. Okay, issue the transaction as normal process like customer invoice flow. Okay, so this is an example. Okay, so e-invoice issued by event planner to Simon. So event planner A incurred 30,000 to rent a hotel banquet hall for a product launch event. The hotel issued e-invoice to event planner A for the rental. So event planner A will recover the rental cost and charge a service fee to Simon. So the e-invoice detail will be, okay, planner A will issue invoice to Simon. Okay, the invoice will include a separate line item. Okay, first one is the service fee. Okay, the charges for services provided by event planner A. Second one is the rental cost, the amount incurred for renting the hotel banquet. So below is the example. Okay, first line, the service fee. Second line is the hotel banquet hall rental. So we issue a customer invoice. Okay, so first row, the service fee. Second row is the rental fee. Okay, so for classification code, for the reimbursement, we have to use 027. Okay. For other services, then we can use 022. Okay. So these are the things that you need to fill in. Okay. So if local seller, then you use GT10. Foreign seller, you use GT30 lah. So same thing as previously. So this is the E-invoice sample format lah. Then this is the sample from MyInvoice portal. So you can see the classification code together with the description of product and service. Okay. So employee benefit and also expenses claim. Now better or still the same? Okay, I try to speak louder. Okay, so these are the employee benefits. Okay, telephone bill, petrol parking, toll, refreshment, entertainment claims, car maintenance, okay, so on and so forth lah. Okay, so this is an example. So e-invoice to be issued in the name of the employer. Okay, employees are required to request for the e-invoice to be issued to the employer for proof of expense for tax purpose. So like, let's say if you go to a petrol station, so if you can claim, then the receipt you need to request to be put under your company's name. Okay. So in case the receipt is issued under the employee, okay, businesses will be allowed to proceed with the e-invoice issued in the name of employee or existing supporting document as proof of expenses for tax purpose. Okay. So the claim process, okay, if your staff want to claim back, if no, then no need invoice. If yes, okay, then it's the invoice under your employer's name. Yes, then okay, then if no, then is it under employee's name? Yes, then okay. And if no, then they have to provide any existing supporting document lah. Okay, it's only applicable if the benefit are clearly stated in the employee's policy and prove the employee is acting on behalf of employer when incurred the expenses. So this usually you can find it on your company handbook lah. Okay. So how you do it? So you can either go to supplier module, transaction, and then payment voucher, or you can go to accounting module, cash book, and then payment. So same thing, you will need to select as other payment. Then you enter the PE details, the information. Then you select the payment method, cash or bank, and then you specify the account code. Okay. Right. So now we talk about our e-invoice dashboard and submission flow. So we have our dashboard where we have our process profile and also dashboard. And then for submission, we will have a month-end consolidated invoice and also the grace period consolidated invoice. So how to access the dashboard? You will have to go to the e-invoice Malaysia transaction. And then, sorry, this is the e-invoice process profile. So this e-invoice process profile is you will need to create for every month. Because when you do the consolidate, it will based on this profile month to help you to generate. So you have to go to e-invoice Malaysia transaction and then e-invoice process profile. So for example, like let's say you want to submit invoice for November 2024. So the process profile you will need to create. Okay. You can click on more and then new next e-invoice process profile and then you click save. Okay. So usually this one you can do this beforehand lah. So like let's say you can create it for next 2 years. So you just click on more and then your next until you have 24. Okay. So for our dashboard, you can access through Invoice Malaysia, transaction, and then e-invoice dashboard. So for example, you want to submit the e-invoice for November 2024. Okay, you can check the status of e-invoice transaction document status. So from the dashboard, you can click on the profile ID for the month. Like I say, it's November. You select for November. Then you click on refresh data. Okay, it will retrieve the transaction for the month of November. So this is the overview. So remember for the document we have open and also ready to submit status. Here we can see. Okay, and then also those transaction that is invalidation, valid and other status. So you can check from here. So for invalidation status, these are transaction that is submitted to LHDN, but still pending from their side lah for the result. Valid means that it is validated successfully by LHDN. Invalid means that transaction that is rejected by LHDN. Not applicable status, these are the transaction that is not required to submit e-invoice. Whereas for expired, these are the transaction that exceed the 72-hour submission. So we also have a report for you to preview. Okay, you are allowed to print or preview the transaction e-invoice. Okay, how to access? We can go to E-Invoice Malaysia report and then e-invoice transaction listing. So these are the filter. These are the filtering option. You can select by, you can filter by location, date. Okay. The e-invoice document overall flow is, you can also select like open, ready to submit, valid or invalid. Okay. And then the e-invoice document type, you can also check one check lah, whichever you want or don't want. Okay. After that, you can click on preview. So the report will be shown as this lah, as an example lah. Okay. So for this report is under HQ. So we have under open. Okay, how many we have submitted for validation, and then valid and invalid. Okay.
In e-invoice
I'll show you a video on how a dashboard look, how to use.
In the invoice simulation page, you can easily monitor your transactions by clicking the Status tab. You can also able to submit e-invoice by right-click on the transaction. Besides, you can also monitor your transactions to avoid from exceeding the allowed submission window. You can also double-click on the transaction to enter the edit mode of the transaction.
Okay. Now is for the e-invoice and consolidate submission flow for our B2C. So usually it needs to be done within 7 days after the end of the billing month lah. So for example, for month of October, okay, the last day for you to issue the consolidate e-invoice is on 7th of November. Okay, the earlier the better lah. So how we do the consolidate? So we go to E-Invoice Malaysia, transaction, and then E-Invoice consolidated invoice. So for example, now we want to do for November. Okay, we click on more, and then we click generate consolidated invoices. So we'll have a wizard out here for you to follow. Okay, click on next, and then we select the process profile for November. Click on next. Select our document type. We select Cassius. Okay, then next. Then we select for which location. Okay. So that we click on simulate. Then we'll ask you, are you sure you want to simulate? Click yes. So once the record is successfully generated, the system will display the total number of the document and total submission amount for each location. So for example, if location there, if you choose 10, so at here, you also have 10 row. Then we click on next. Click on generate. Yes to proceed. Then click OK to finish. So from here, we put in a percentage on the document number column here. Then we search the record. So it will show the one that we done just now. Okay. Select which record that you want to submit. Okay. For example, it's under PT. We click on PT and then we click on more. Then we go to E-Invoice section. And then we click submit document. So click on submit document. It will ask you yes or no. Click yes. Then it will show you submit document process completed. Then we click OK. So if successfully submitted and validated, so the status will update to valid lah. So from the same screen, you can also see the document flow ID and also document status ID. So it's validated success and the status is valid. So if you want to print out, then you can click on the print method. Then you select our E-Invoice format. So it will show you this information. So the consolidated E-Invoice buyer information will be as below. The buyer's name, you will put as general public. Then buyer's team will use the public team. Okay. So the registration, everything, it will be put under NA. So this is for the consolidated E-Invoice. So once the document is successfully submitted, the consumer can scan the QR code to redirect to the SAP platform to download the E-Invoice. So once they scan, it will show as your E-Invoice is ready. So they can download and keep it. They can keep the copy.
For issuing
I'll show you a video on how to do the consolidate E-Invoice.
For issuing Consolidate Invoice, click More and select Generate Consolidate Invoice. Following by selecting E-Invoice Profile, Document Type, Location, and click on Stimulate button. After verified the Consolidate data, save the Consolidate Invoice. For submission, click on the Consolidate Invoice which you wish to submit as E-Invoice, then go to More, E-Invoice Action, Click Submit Document and proceed for e-invoice submission. The system is getting result from IRBM and is done. The transaction status will become validated success. Eventually, you can print out the e-invoice format and keep it for your record purposes.
Okay, so these are the 7 types of industries that are not allowed to issue consolidated e-invoice. Okay, the sales of motor vehicle, the sales of air ticket and private charter, luxury goods and jewelry. Okay, then construction contractor, wholesalers and retailers of construction materials, licensed betting and gaming, currently exempted until further notice, and then payment to agents, dealers, and distributor. So all these are not allowed to issue consolidated invoices. Right. So this is the interim relaxation period, 6-month grace period. So during the interim relation period, IRBM has agreed to allow all taxpayers to adopt the following. Okay, they can issue consolidated e-invoice for all activities and transaction of revenue. They can also issue consolidated self-bill invoice for self-bill circumstances. Allow input any information or details in description of product or services. And they are not required to issue individual e-invoice, even request by buyer or individual self-bill e-invoice, even request by supplier. Okay. Additionally, IRBM will not undertake any prosecution action under Section 120 of ITA 1967 during the interim relaxation period, provided taxpayer comply requirement in and of the above. Okay. Right. So for the e-invoice grace period, so we can access from e-invoice Malaysia transaction and then e-invoice grace period. Okay. We have to either consolidate invoices or consolidate self-bill invoices. So for consolidate invoice, we add a new record, select customer. So for this one, we can create a customer code called general public for consolidate customer submission purpose. Key in your total sales amount of the month for each item and then click save. Okay. So the consolidate e-invoice buyer information is follow lah. The buyer name will put as general public. The buyer team will use the GT10. Then all the other information we'll put it as NA. So we same thing, we submit for e-invoice. Okay, click yes for confirmation, click OK. So once successfully submitted and validated, it will update to valid the status. Same thing for self-bill invoice. Okay. So the invoice here, it will mark as self-bill invoice, and then the information it will show as general public lah, with GT10 number, and the rest is NA.